adventure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it looks like we're waiting for one of our panelists, but he's on his way. And it looks like we have a lot of participants. Are we good to get started today?
I think we can get started.
Thank you, everybody, for coming to the November Forum, The Impact of Design, Past, Present, and Future. I'm so excited to see you all over Zoom and introduce you to our panelists. Let's see. So we have Jackie, Raven, Randall, and Laura. And I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves when they start talking about their organization. And since since Randall is hopping on right now, I am going to just stop screen sharing and let Jackie and Raven take it away. Can you all tell us, you work with Your Street, Your Voice. Jackie, can you give us, before you start talking about what that is, can you give us a little bio of yourself? And Raven, can you give a little bio of yourself? And then can you talk a little bit about what is Your Street, Your Voice? What does it do? And what needs are you addressing in your community that you were seeing a need for?
Awesome. Thanks, Raven. Thanks, Kate and Lauren. And thanks, Ren, for having us today. My name is Jackie Santolucia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the program director of Your Street, Your Voice and Empower Her at Camp Elso. Little bit of background about myself. I'm a practicing architect. I've been practicing for over 15 years, and I've transitioned to be an educator of design. And that is a direct response of our design industries having a serious lack of representation and leadership, specifically in Black and Brown communities. And so I am an East Coast native, and as part of working in New York and Philadelphia, was working a lot with high school students and using project-based learning for building as core curriculum. And it's been incredibly apparent that high school is the pivot point. I don't know about y'all, but I had to make a decision going to college or what you're doing for your career at high school. And if that decision wasn't made, then I don't think I'd be where I am right now. I don't think I would be a licensed architect. And so coming to Portland 5 years ago, working at Hacker Architects, going through our own internal JEDI assessment, going through the JUST certification from ILFI, confirmed all of the things of being very homogenous, and we wanted to do something about it. Culturally, internally, we were doing a lot of work, but really wanting to address the pipeline. And so Your Street, Your Voice is an origin of the amazing folks, Joe Swank, Audrey Alberson at Hacker and the support of Hacker. And now we're full blown as part of Camp Elso. Camp Elso is a Black-led nonprofit organization here in town that focuses on STEAM education. And part of this too, we've expanded to other programs, including Empower Her. And with that, I'm going to segue. Raven is a student of Empower Her now, was a student in Your Street, Your Voice, and is also part of our Tap In Roots intern fellows. So go ahead, Raven.
Just again, want to say thank you for having me. Name is Raven Pierce. I'm 17 years old. I am a high school senior, which is weird to say because it hasn't been a normal transition of high school. But I'm a high school senior at Benson Tech. And so I'll just talk about kind of Your Street, Your Voice, what it's done for me. I think younger, I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to build, but there is not a lot of opportunities that are usually open to my Black and Brown peers for us to be in this workspace, for us to be in this STEM field. And so Your Street, Your Voice came way of my school that I attended before De La Salle North Catholic, which is a very diverse school. And it was an opening to a world that just explored design, explored, I can put a library in my community and it can change so much. I can put a school here, I can create these type of things that really uplift and help, build my community. So that's really what Your Street, Your Voice has done for me in terms it's really is a design internship program that runs 8 weeks. And so, yes.
Awesome. Welcome, Randall. We're so excited to see you. We are having Jackie and Raven talk about Your Street, Your Voice for a little bit, and then we're going to talk to you and Laura. So Jackie and Raven, can you dig a little, can you tell us the origin story of Your Street, Your Voice, and like what does it look like? What does the curriculum look like? Who do you work with? All that good stuff. And what do the projects look like? All that good stuff.
Sure. So just building on a little bit. So Your Street, Your Voice started with industry at Hacker and in 2016. And the intention was to do what Raven was talking about, is a design studio for 8 sessions where we ask our students, first question, if there's one thing that you can change or create in your neighborhood through design, what would it be? And so students identify something that they can create that is ownership in the place that they live, know, love, learn, and play. And so having someone even ask that type of question to you is really empowering to really think about like what would benefit my community immediately. And the built environment, as we all know, has so much power and influence on understanding our quality of life and understanding who's valued and who's not. And so oftentimes we're seeing that there are some significant racist practices. I'm sure we'll get into that. And so students go through the design process. They do site analysis, they do programming, they do circulation drawings, then they're doing full-blown architectural drawings. And then now, because we're fully digital, most of our students are doing 3D renderings and 3D SketchUp models. And then at the end, it's final presentations. This fall cohort's actually final presentations are next week. They're free and open to the public. And they'll present in front of a panel, and they'll also moderate a panel discussion with professionals. A differentiator of the program is that our students get paid to participate. It's treated as a job. It is thought of, especially because we prioritize Black, Indigenous students of color, as well as LGBTQIA. We are instilling pay equity from the beginning. And we consider our students, and I say this to Raven a lot, like she is a consultant. She is a lived expert consultant that knows the ins and outs. So Your Street, Your Voice, this year, it's been so incredible because now it's just been this program. And now we are a full program under Camp ELSA, which is an amazing environmental education organization. So we are now offering built environment and natural environment programs because as designers, we think about both and we operate in both. And so a spin-off of Your Street, Your Voice is a program called Empower Her. And I'd love, Raven, if you can talk about that.
Yeah, no, Empower Her, it's in the name. It looks to empower BIPOC, women, femme, non-binary communities to basically get out there into your community and empower them as well. I can give an example from just my experience. I'm doing a project focused on empowering Black women, but also speaking about our discrimination and awareing others. So my form is in an art zine, which is a mini magazine, more free form. But really with Empower Her, you are looking to intersect all the ways that you as a woman or you as a non-binary or you as a femme, are active in your community. The ways that you are intersectional, whether you're Black, LGBTQ, Black and gay, Black and, or any other identities. And it looks to, again, empower her. Like I said, it's all in the name, but it's so much more. We did a workshop recently just on how to control your finances. What do you do after college? Buying credit cards, not doing credit cards. But again, like it's really looking to just help the design community enter with its intersectionality. So for lack of better words, I think, yeah.
Raven, can I put you on the spot? You want to talk a little bit about Tap and Roots too?
Yeah, Tap and Roots is under Camp ELSA again as well. And me and about 15 other Black cohorts are focused on, again, getting out into the community. I love Camp ELSA because all of this stuff is working in the community that I love and see every day. And so right now we're going through a training period. We will be working with different organizations, Blueprint Foundation, Beam, and I believe 2 others. But we're focused on teaching younger folks, younger generations, how to engage with the environment, but also how to break down systemic barriers, institutional barriers, racism, but it's in this environment, you know. And so, yes.
That's awesome. So Jackie and Raven, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you see Your Street, Your Voice changing the design industry. What is your hope for the future and what this program does for the design community and the design industry?
Raven, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to go first.
Oh my goodness.
I don't mean if you don't want to, that's fine. But I'm more interested about what you think.
Yeah. Quite simply, with attending a polytechnic school, I'm right now majoring in construction. But when I walk into construction, I am the only Black face, the only Black female face there. And so that's just only a piece into the world of what I hope to achieve. That when I walk in, I'm not instantly noticing how many white people in the room or other race. I'm seeing people who are looking like me, or even people who are, you know, brown and Black. And so with Your Street, Your Voice, I really want to know that when I go into the architectural field, I have more people who are able to collaborate with me and connect in a way with me that is familiar to me, that is familiar to the community, Black community that Portland sees, that they can see more faces of the people who are going to be designing their lives, designing how they go about, you know, their daily lives. And so that's really what I hope that Your Street, Your Voice does. And I think it is doing it. It's just, you just have to keep sending out the emails to students. You know, I have to keep negotiating, you know, getting those other high school students to come out, because you don't know, you know, how much of a gem that this program is.
I'm laughing because I send a lot of emails, especially
Yes.
in virtual time. Like, come out to this thing, come out to this thing.
Right.
I appreciate you saying that, Raven. And I'm going to take this question in a different angle. I think we at Your Street, Your Voice at ELSO, all of our programs at ELSO is to build up a pipeline. My interest is for when this critical mass of amazing legacy makers and change makers are ready for employment, that the offices, that the organizations that they're going into are not just welcoming, but just pass the mic so they have power and agency to do what they do best. And so the way in which that I see that happening is through how we have intentional partnerships with existing firms. Firms, y'all have a lot of power. You are transforming our city as we speak. And right, wrong, or indifferent, the impact is long lasting. We build buildings for 50 to 100 years. That is multiple generations of impact that happens. And so thinking about not just projects of buildings, but of work culture in organizations. I think one thing that we really want to try to dismantle is white supremacy in the workplace. And what that looks like is performance-based, bottom line, just robotic. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're building communities using the medium of architecture and interior design. And that, I'm going to quote Adrienne Marie Brown here, that happens at the speed of trust, not at the timeline with the time and budget. And so that's my hope. That is a huge, messy, gnarly thing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what Randall's initiatives are about that too, because we're all trying to get towards justice. And that looks a lot different than the way that we're operating right now.
That's awesome. So the theme of this forum is past, present, future. And that's why I'm so excited to talk with you, Jackie, and well, all of you, but to sort of recap, like the past of the design industry has had very real effects on the present in terms of who's in it, who's doing the design, and how it's affecting communities. And I really love that you guys are sort of rooted in all three in terms of you're addressing the pipeline, which is a future, to address the future of how this industry looks by looking at the present. And so I want to turn to Randall and Laura with Taking Ownership PDX. And I would love to hear, Randall, if you could talk a little bit about the history of taking ownership and what need were you seeing in the community that you decided to address, and how you and Laura work together. Because I know, Laura, you're with what's up?
We don't really. I mean, we have a few times. Yeah,
Okay.
so I mean, a completely separate organization.
Got it. So let's start with Randall, and then we'll go to Laura. But if you could both talk about that a little bit, like what is the history of this organization, and what need were you seeing in your community specifically that you wanted to address? And just tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So with Taking Ownership, how it started out was basically I've made quite the name for myself in this community, being a Portland native, being that I grew up in the Black community as a Black man. I'm currently in school finishing my bachelor's in Black Studies. I'm a hip hop artist that's very outspoken through my music. Built quite the fan base through my band and my music. So people kind of know me as that person who's outspoken about social injustices, especially when it comes to oppression of Black people. And so when the murder of George Floyd happened, and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and the social climate started picking up, people started reaching out to me, particularly white people started reaching out to me and asking how they could be more of an ally to the Black community and other communities that are marginalized. And I told them the real change is going to happen is if you can start sharing your resources, start sharing your money. So because it's evident, and if anybody who knows anything about the history of America is that we have not gotten the same economic opportunities as white people have, and particularly in this state, which was created as a white utopia, we particularly don't have, even have less opportunities than some other places. So when they started hearing that, people started, they're like, well, who can I donate to? Like, who do we give to? And I was like, look, I can't do all this work for you. Y'all got to figure it out. But then I just started thinking, like, you know what? It might be a good idea if we started pouring some money into this dwindling community, already small, but now dwindling homeowner and business owner Black community, and start doing some repairs and renovations to some of these places to maybe build some equity and raise property values. Now, I went into this very naive because this is not my field. I come from mental health. I was a school counselor before this and worked as a mentor for Black and Latino youth on probation. So, I had to bring in a good friend of mine, his name's Zach Mills, to kind of help me along with this process. Laura helped a lot as well, as we, to learn a little bit more about how this process goes. But originally I was thinking we just get volunteers and we go to these homes and we start swinging hammers, and, but there's a lot more to that, so as I've learned, it's changed a little bit. But yeah, so I basically, I was just like, let's get some funding. I found a home. Zach went out there with me and was like, okay, they need this, this, and this done. I presented that on my social media, and people are like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Like, I hear people started sending me money. I wasn't even like thinking about money as much at the time. I was more thinking about, like, people would just be like, I have a buddy that works in lumber or something, and that. But then all of a sudden people are sending me money to my personal Venmo, and I have thousands of dollars within a week. So I start using that money to pay for this woman's repairs. And then from there, it started like kind of snowballed really, really fast. Some media outlets got a hold of it. We were on the news a bunch. And then from there, it's kind of been slowly, we're an LLC right now, slowly working our ways towards becoming a nonprofit. And right now we have about 53 families in our database that we're serving and allocating money to. And we're just continuing to grow and fundraise. And we have partnerships now with various construction companies or home repair companies like flooring places, what have you. It's really been continuing to grow, and that's kind of how it came about.
I love that. And I think this is something, Laura, that you and I have talked about sort of before, about this need to, that there are a lot of policies in place that affect these communities in terms of how their properties are valued. And Randall, that's what you're trying to address, right? The property value of these homes to sort of prevent gentrification. Am I understanding that correctly?
I mean, that's the hope, you know, and also that's why we are bringing people in that have knowledge around, that can do advocacy to make sure that these people aren't, you know, that these families aren't getting taken advantage of from predatory developers, predatory lenders. And yeah, we do hope at some point, we don't have the funding right now to really put forth the money to put in the repairs to like really raise property values and equity right now. But yeah, that is a goal down the line. And then also we have to take into account property taxes and make sure we have resources to help them with that. But yeah, that is the goal, to make sure they age in place and that they have the knowledge to not get taken advantage of, because we see that often in the families that we're serving.
Awesome. That's a perfect segue to Laura. Can you talk a little bit about your organization, Renovate PDX, and again, what need you are seeing and how you're addressing that?
For sure. I think that the overarching theme that you could ascribe to Renovate PDX is accessibility. I came from, my undergrad is in art. I should have gone into law, and I ended up in architecture, which is, I think, a really good combination of the two. And after spending 8 years in the profession, I was a little disgruntled with it, and I didn't see it really being the service that I knew it could be. I mean, architectural services are really an essential service, right? I mean, it's as if getting your car repaired cost you thousands of dollars and you didn't know who to go to, and they're all a bunch of old white men that are really intimidating. It's that sort of thing of architecture services in general are really inaccessible to people that need them most. So I saw, from moving into the Mississippi neighborhood, fresh in Oregon in 2005, I saw the neighborhood change incredibly over the next 10 years. And I saw so many people, I saw gentrification, result in displacement, and really wanting to help in any way that I could to offset that, because gentrification doesn't have to be a nasty word. It doesn't have to result in displacement, right? So how do we work and how do we address making architectural services more accessible? One of the main things we saw is the predatory development. So you have a home in a neighborhood that's up and coming, and a developer's like, I want that home. That's kind of a slightly rundown, probably an older, BIPOC homeowner. So they start calling in code violations. Those code violations go unaddressed. This becomes a problem house. So they get fees, they get citations, turns into liens. The house is sold at foreclosure to address and satisfy those liens with the city. So that's the process that developers use in order to get that home at auction that they wanted. So I actually, when I was scheming this whole idea, got the chance to meet with Amy with the city just about a year ago now. The city, with the Building Development Services, came about with this Empowered Neighborhoods program. And they were kind of seeing the same problem that we brought to them of, hey, how do we stop, how do we throw the stick in the cogs and stop the wheels from turning and address these with homeowners that need this help and need this service? So we schemed a few things. We have, we offer sliding scale architectural services, residential needs across the board to any homeowner that needs them. We meet them where they are with free site visits, free consultations, free assessments. And then we help work with the city. A lot of these, I've got 6 clients right now, and 4 of them have come to me from the city calling and saying, hey, I need you to work with this homeowner and help alleviate these issues. So we kind of are that almost, I like architecture, social worker in a way. And so the accessibility and the education, we have to look ahead to what HB 2001 is going to be doing to the potential for infill development. And in that, the gray market development, seeing that we've been at around 2% vacancy rates for, good God, 15 years now. The rental market in Portland is so incredibly tight, as I'm sure every one of you knows. And when you're going to look at spots and you're like, oh, this is kind of sketch. I'm not sure this place was actually fully permitted. Yeah, the house is fine, but the basement was finished out. There's not proper egress. Are you sure this was sealed from radon? Is there proper insulation or even heat source? You have a lot of gray market development because, you know, HGTV has not been our friend here. Homeowners like, I can do that. And, you know, 2 weeks later, they've remodeled a basement. And you're like, great, but there's so many other issues that go into that. So making our services accessible to that DIY homeowner by providing pop-up permit counters, by saying, hey, we're going to be where you are in your neighborhood this Saturday. Come with your designs, come with your ideas. We can walk you through the feasibility of this and help you with this process, because so many people don't bother getting things permitted because it's just such an intimidating, I don't want to get the city involved, you know, kind of just the lack of understanding of the benefits to having a truly permitted place. So we're helping to really anticipate the infill that's going to happen on top of what's happening, and also wanting to make sure that our homeowners are able to hang on to the value of their property, but making sure that the work's done to their house is permitted and meets all code. So that's kind of where we came from. And, you know, we're a little bit more on the technical side, but we're all about just making these services as accessible as possible to the people who really need them.
That's awesome. Can you explain HB 21?
Right. So HB 2001 is a state bill that actually is pretty remarkable. It's amazing how our state's the only one who said, hey, you know what? Single family zoning doesn't really work. Our single family zoning for the last 50 years has made what we call missing middle typologies pretty much illegal. So we have, by eliminating the diversity of housing typologies, we have increased the overall unaffordability, because you're either going for a single family home or you're going for some fancy condo in a tower, unless you're able to secure one of those cute little Portland, you know, cottage row homes or an old duplex or an old fourplex. And that's what they are. They're old. They were built in the 50s. I think we were, you know, zoning them out in the 60s. So HB 2001 said, look, we need, because we have our tight urban growth boundaries, how do we maximize density and infill in our cities? So with any city above 10,000, they have eliminated single family zoning. Awesome. So now what do cities allow and how do they do this? So the city of Portland kind of drug their feet a little bit, but they finally got around to passing this really great infill, which is going to go into, all of the zoning is going to go into effect next August. So if you've got a corner lot, you can now go from a single family with an ADU to a 4 or 5 units on that property if you're going to do make them affordable. There's like an affordability push in there that you can increase. So Portland and Oregon in general really looking to, you know, say, how do we increase the city that we have? How do we increase the density? How do we increase our housing typologies and a variety of housing in order to address our housing needs and, you know, the affordable housing crisis?
Awesome. That's amazing. So I want to kick us off here with a discussion about these policies or things that that are happening sort of behind the scenes that maybe designers aren't super aware of, or just folks in general. And I want to ask all of you, what are some things that happen behind the scenes that affect the communities you work with that you wish more people knew about? And I'll start maybe with Jackie and Raven. Go for it, Jackie.
Okay.
You go.
No, Raven, I thought you were going to talk. Go, Raven.
No, actually, just with behind the scenes, I don't know too much about policy work. But it was interesting because my construction class did take a look at, I believe, HB 2001, and we did like this just deep dive into some things. But just things, I guess I'll answer, things that people don't know necessarily affect like my community, the Black community. I remember it was a few years ago, and I think Oregon was talking about putting in a store or putting in like a natural grocers instead of a Trader Joe's. And it's interesting because when Trader Joe's was going to happen, you know, the Black people in the community were like, we don't shop at a Trader Joe's. I've never been in a Trader Joe's. I don't know any other African-American people that I know have been in a Trader Joe's. and it's very expensive. And so what I wondered was, who is the target audience for this store? How are we putting this store in a neighborhood that very much is Black? Even now, I walk into natural grocers sometimes, and the prices are still very high. I've seen prices higher than New Seasons. And you have to ask, people don't necessarily know, it's not just about the houses. It's about the corner store shops. It's about the boutiques. It's about those little nitpick areas in stores that you would go to, you know, that maybe was owned by an uncle or aunt or a community member that are now gone. And so I think for me, that is the background that a lot of people don't see. It's those little stores that really start to propel gentrification, start to propel Black people and indigenous communities being pushed out of our neighborhoods. And so I'm going to pass that to you, Jack.
The project, the store that Raven's referring to is called Alberta Commons. It's on Alberta and MLK. And I think that was an ongoing contentious project, right? Because it's in going back to policy, that's a Prosper Portland project. And Prosper Portland is the real estate development, economic development wing in our city. And it's there is taxpayer dollars being invested in that project. And it was a major miss in terms of getting not just community engagement, community decision-making and what would have the most community benefit. I think looking at history and policies even further, one thing that we always talk about in Your Street, Your Voice is like the implications of redlining, like which is from 1940s and what that still is today, parallel to the new the ozone, like is it occupation zone? I'm occupancy. What am I saying? You know what I'm talking about, right? The
Opportunity zone.
Opportunity zone. Thank you. I'm like, that's not the right word. Yes. And so when you overlay those maps of where opportunity zones are and where redlining is, there's a lot of overlap in like inner circle Portland, but then all of the airport is an opportunity zones. A lot of Beaverton where it's convenient for some outdoor apparel companies are located there. And so talking about where financial investment is going and who is that benefiting, specifically taxpayer dollar money that's going in there. And so and a project that's another project that I'm thinking of is actually the Benson High School remodel. And in addition to the Benson High School remodel is the building, it's called the Multiple Pathways for Graduation. And so that's school was in a redlining district. And so thinking about the implications of that, it's the only technical school in Portland metro area, and how we see the remnants of redlining in every component in the city. And it, even though sometimes it's invisible, it doesn't take much for it to reveal itself. The same thing on the Hill Block site, like from eminent domain of a very affluent Black business incubation space. We see that at Albina Vision too. So, and one of the projects like that has gotten a lot of press recently is the Red House on Mississippi. And you talked about this, Randall, in terms of predatory loans and foreclosures. And so I'm curious, Randall, what you're seeing or what policies you're thinking about.
Yeah, so you know, like I'm very new to this field, but some of the things that I am concerned about when it comes to the development of new construction is how involved the community is in like community design reviews.
Yeah.
Or board. I think they have a board for developers, but when you're a homeowner, you have to go through your whole neighborhood and get signed off, and they have a say in like how things look. I don't know if that's really at the communities as involved in these big developers, and they're just throwing buildings up that aren't really catering to the culture of the community. You know, if it's a Black community, they're building these big buildings that when Oregon, or when Portland had a very low vacancy rate, they were just throwing buildings up, and there were hefty prices. And you know what populations that's bringing in. So now you have to consider what populations integrating into this community. Are they really truly trying to integrate with the community? Sometimes you see the engagement change between the people that have been there and the people that now move in. And like Raven was talking about, these new businesses coming to the mix that aren't really that are knocking out some of the culturally specific businesses, right? Or resources even, that are in some of these areas, or they're displacing people and moving them out to areas that are far away from the resources they once were near, like Urban League or something like, SCI. Now we don't have Black families living near SCI anymore, really, So it's the fact that the community is not involved in these big developments that are happening in their backyard. And then also you'll see like a single family home get replaced with a building that's now 12 to 20 units, so that more people using more utilities, and you got to think about who's paying for that, who's paying for the upgrades of these utilities. Those are some of the things behind, I don't know, a lot of people think about in these situations when new construction goes up in these neighborhoods. So
that's awesome. I love that you're like, I just wanted to help, and now I have to know about building policy. Hooray!
Yeah. I mean, it's important. It is important, and I'm learning as I go. It's actually very valuable information.
Yeah.
Something
Laura.
in.
Yeah.
I wanted to speak a little bit to kind of what I see as one of the biggest issues that's happened behind the scenes is and I'm talking on a big meta here with the country at large, our privatization of public housing and how we have completely taken housing off as an essential right or need, or said, oh no, that's a luxury. Housing in our country really is no longer a humanitarian right or a need. And so one of the things I want to say a big props to for AOC is getting the Fair Cloth Act retracted. So the Fair Cloth Act was put in place in the early mid-90s when everyone's booming and everything's great. And the country was like, cool, you know what? We've hit our max for affordable housing, right? Like, let's not build anymore. Whatever's out there is all that's out there. Okay, cool. So now we're looking 20 something years later, and the amount of affordable housing that's there, one, has probably largely been privatized, and two, is insufficient to meet the need that we currently have. So that's why we have, voucher lists for Section 8 housing that are, Jesus, how long are these lists? They're going through lotteries, picking lucky people who are going to somehow, you're going to get lucky and get a house. It's like having to go to GoFundMe to afford healthcare expenses. And it's just one of those things that as the richest country in the world, we shouldn't even be having this be an issue, but it is. And that's a policy issue behind the scenes that has affected so many people's stability and ability to secure housing. So along those lines there, I have to give, a shout out to Portland for at least, recognizing and trying to rectify in so many ways. For instance, one of the great policy things they've done behind the scenes is they've been like, oh, hey, we recognize not all homeowners are coming from a, WASPy background. A lot of these homeowners maybe have different cultural issues going on. Maybe they need different kitchens. We're seeing a lot of illegal kitchens. Maybe we can allow them to have two separate kitchens because, in the Jewish tradition, they need to separate meat and dairy. And I have a house visit next week, a site visit with a home who they're from India, Southeast Asia, but I'm not exactly sure what cultural, things going on, but they have an illegal kitchen in their garage. So we're going to convert that. It's like, no, look, you can do it now. Like, it's legal. Let's help you do this legally. So, I think that there are some great ways that Portland is trying to be like, hey, look, we're more aware of these issues and we're making policy changes to that. But again, it's the awareness of those policy changes. It's the awareness that there is this giant fund of money. If you live in the interstate corridor, you can access $40,000 grant from PHP to do necessary home upgrades. We just found out about that 2 weeks ago, and I work with the city. And the city's like, oh my God, look at this funding source we found. I'm like, how do you not know about this? So it's one of those things of just increasing awareness in so many ways about the policies that are out there.
That's awesome. So one thing that I think is really hard for designers and that I struggle with, and that we're obviously not going to solve in like the 15 minutes before our panel is over, but is how do we increase density without making like these huge high rises that only cater to rich white folks? Like, how do we strike a balance of increasing density, getting more affordable housing, building more housing in general? Like, how do we as designers strike that balance? Or is it a policy issue, or is it a design issue? Like, how do we make sure that as designers, we are not contributing to Black and brown folks being displaced in the projects that we have? Like, what does that balance sort of look like to you? I think maybe Laura is the best one to answer this, or just anyone who wants to answer. But like, what is that? Like,
Jump in there. That's a big one.
it's a big one, but like, how do we create that balance? Because it is important to have density, but we want to support, like you said, folks of different, backgrounds, adding density to their properties, and the city has expressed interest in that. But how do we make sure we do it in a way that is not predatory and is not does not disadvantage folks? And I don't know the answer to that, and I was hoping one of you would.
I'm not sure there is a direct answer to that. I'd love to hear what Jackie has to say. I'm gonna
playing hot potato. We're like, what do you think? Yeah.
I think Raven and I talked about this, and feel free to chime in here, Raven, in terms of different pathways to home ownership. So I think the policies and like the zoning of doing ADUs as another pathway. I think projects like the Argyle in Kenton of doing SROs, which are single resident occupancies, really thinking about different housing typologies that keep the building footprint smaller, and it's a transition of shared space. It also keeps the utilities leaner as well. But I think copying models like the Community Investment Trust, that's a commercial space that is pathways to ownership. I think that even doing pathways to ownership of commercial space too, I think is any way that there's wealth generation through real estate, in whether that's even doing a REIT, which is a real estate investment trust, for that doesn't necessarily tie directly. And like Community Investment Trust, for those who aren't familiar with, it's a Mercy Corps initiative that's doing it across the country. But folks who participate in that, their investment can be as little as $10 a month. So like, you're already starting to accrue assets with a very small, and especially for folks who are longtime renters or have housing insecurities, putting in a mortgage is like, it's a huge barrier. I think, and of course, like having alternatives to do infill work of the 4 to 5 units, and getting really creative, and like, not necessarily doing a 20-foot or a 20-story skyline, but having a little bit more flexibility on like what housing spaces look like.
I love that.
Raven, do you want to add anything to that? You had some really good thoughts about homeownership.
Well, I will just say, like, again, thank you for this. This has been such a learning curve, a lot of information that I'm seeing. But one thing that stuck out to me is what you were saying, Laura, about policy. I like history more than I usually show it, but I love history. And one of the things I love the history about this country, even though it's very terrible, you look at the Black exclusion laws made in 1844, the first one that was saying that if there's Black settlers here, for every 6 months that you all are still here, your punishment will be being lashed 39 times or even more than that. This policy, I just looked up, researched when it was taken out of, I believe, like Oregon's constitution, and they showed that 18 years ago that 30% of the voters elected to keep this racist clause in the Constitution. Oregon has a past that we do not want to look at. But until we look at that, until we get these policies, these words, it's the little microaggressions. It's the little words that, you know, talk about Black people as Negroes. It's those points in history that if we do not get rid of these policies, we will not do any work. It's all in policy. But then the second piece of that is all in community. Getting out and talking to the community that you know you want to help. It's not just the white tenants that have been in the community apart as a community for a long time. It's talking to the BIPOC people. It's talking to the people that are not usually involved with these certain committees, you know? It's doing that work, and we make it harder than it seems, but literally it's just starting the conversation. It's just things like this. But then you reach out to other folks in the community. You reach out to heads of the community in the Black community. You reach out to your SEIs that know how to reach us. Because one of the things as a Black person that is very hard is can be a disconnect when you have these events. Say you have this event and you're talking to a Black audience, but there's no faces that look like you. There's not a me, there's not a Randall, there's nobody that you know, and there's people telling you all of these things that they want to do for you, but you don't have anybody in the middle to say, hey y'all, this is what this means, and this is what ultimately is the benefit, you know? And so I think I went a little bit farther because I can't remember where I was coming back to, but again, policy, community engagement, it's so many just corporations, LLCs, nonprofits that do this. If you look out, if you network with them, you know, they're waiting, they're ready for this engagement. They want to partner with big corporations. You know, they are ready to do the work, and they will, and it will be ready. But like I say, the work can only get done if you want it to. So that's the important thing. If there's other people from these, if you have a big corporation, whether it's from design to wherever, if you want to do the work, you will take those 10, 15 minutes that it takes you to go ahead, do a quick Google search, and you will get your answers. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I think just throw something in just as a quick overall. I know that we're speaking specifically to an interior design audience, but I would like to say in general for the design field that if we want to see it focus more on, you know, overall social justice issues or overall taking care of people issues, it needs to be more of a female oriented profession and less of a white male dominated. Coming from the architecture profession, we've stuck at 20% female for God knows how many years now, way too many, because, you know, not only are the white men the gatekeepers of the, you know, who's licensed in the next generation, but there's also so many issues within the industry that disenfranchise women along the way. And as soon as an industry, though, starts getting more women involved in it, then the focus of the industry changes.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we see that as soon as women got the vote, we start voting in rights for child labor and women, you know, so it's really, once women become more involved and are allowed to be more involved, then, you know, they kind of control, the net controls the head. So that's my equal gender.
I love it.
There.
I love it. Randall, you got something? I saw you trying to unmute.
No, I successfully unmuted. So yeah, I think I'm going to speak a little more radical. If we're talking about keeping the Black community from being gentrified and displaced when these new constructions come up, we got to think about equity. We got to think about reparation based, which is what taking ownership is. We got to think about how do we grandfather in some of these rates, some of these maybe we don't, you know, we help them pay the property taxes. You know, if a new season goes up near some of these homes, the property taxes goes up. Mm-hmm. And so we got to think about if we want to maintain the Black community or any community that's been historically, currently excluded from certain economic opportunities, to where you look at the annual income rates for some of these communities, they're obviously lower than white males, than white people, period. We got to start thinking of equity. How do we level the playing field? How do we allow these people to have the opportunity to continue to pay their mortgage, their property taxes, their bills? And so when those just have to come to account, and like Raven says, we got to have the conversation. We got to see where people are at, you know, instead of just calling in and being like, oh man, their garage is an eyesore. Let me go get the city to go put a lien on them. Instead, why don't you go over there, see where they're at and how, you know, what's going on with what's going on with the family dynamic, what's going on, and how can we help, and just more compassion.
Yeah.
Empathy.
I want to echo what Randall was just saying, and the next step for that, if that person is calling, what's the city doing to uplift the community too? And so, like, I think that's a huge part of having self-determination, especially for Black and Brown communities, to feel like they have the power and agency. And what, as our city, and what you were talking about, Laura, in terms of public housing, what is our public? What are we doing as a city to support reparations and not only just repair the harm that's been done, but so folks can invest and grow capital?
Yeah.
Well, can I speak to the city's program? Can I just
go for it?
Yeah, so about 2 years ago now, the city BDS, in kind of realizing that this is a lot of stuff, they started the equity and access something or another, but basically under the big umbrella of that is the Empowered Neighborhoods Committee, or the Empowered Neighborhoods Initiative Program. So what they've done specifically is look at, so we've got these houses that are getting these dings. Like all of a sudden this house has had, 10 complaints in the last 4 to 6 months. Okay, let's look at that. Let's go in and see, is this just a really crappy landlord with a rental he doesn't care about? Or is this a BIPOC, elderly, low income, disadvantaged homeowner that needs our help? So that's exactly what the city is doing. What I'm working with on, 4 of my clients with, the city is stepping in and saying, hey, look, we're stopping these wheels of bureaucracy. We're stopping the system because we recognize you need help, and we're here to help you. What resources, what do you need? And so that's actually what they are trying to do. They don't really have that many resources because a lot of times they just, calling and be like, hey, we found you a new client. Here you go. And, there's not really much funding or any other way to negotiate how we serve those clients. But this is their first step. And this is their first, like, we're offering help, and we're calling off the lien, we're calling up the code, addresses code violations. Here's, you have your own inspector. We've put all this permitting on a tier 3 priority. We waive all the permitting fees. So they've got on their end, from what they're really able to do, making those efforts. It might be, too little too late. It's definitely just a drop in the bucket. It's not even, really enough right now, but that is happening. So if you see, the home that's a little jankety in the sense, instead of calling it in, like, hey, there's this Empowered Neighborhoods. Let me let you know about this program that could help you out. And I think that information, just spreading information is power. So.
And I will say one more thing that's even more radical. I actually just had a woman sell me her house, a white woman sell me her house for what's left on the mortgage in the Albina neighborhood. So I just bought a house, and she gifted me hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity, put a Black family back into the Albina neighborhood. That's a movement that we're going to partner on and try to really encourage those who have the means, who own multiple properties in the city, that own multiple properties in historically Black neighborhoods to do. And so we'll see how that goes. This woman was on some serious radical stuff, but that's another way that if we're gonna to rebuild the Black community, because let's be real, like we lost the Black community. There's not really a consolidated Black community anymore in the city like there was when I was growing up here in the 90s. It's gone.
It's almost 6, and I think we're saying the same thing. We want to leave some room for Q&A for you guys, and there's been a couple questions here in the chat. The first one I saw was for Jackie. Has there been any crossover with ACE Mentor program and any of the work you're doing?
So we work in tangent with each other. ACE is a national program, and it is for a long period of time. It's from January through May. It's a great organization. They have amazing scholarships, and it is a mentorship program with professionals. I think Your Street, Your Voice is a little bit more nimble, and we're focusing specifically using design as racial justice. We also pay our students to participate. But yes, that we publicize and cross promote and make sure that any opportunities that are available for students to engage in.
Great.
One question I had, since we're right at time, and I wanted to make sure I ask you this before people have to sign off. What is something designers can do right now to support your organizations?
Give money. Give us your money.
Help
us serve the community. Yeah.
And attendees, if you scroll up, I added their the websites to all of these organizations, so you can click on them and click that donate now button. But are there other things that designers can do or get involved with, Jackie or Randall?
Yeah, for us, it's resources. Material donations are big too. We, like I said, we've been partnering with some people. We've had a number of contractor companies offer free labor, free materials, things like that is huge for what we're doing. But yeah, same thing, same as Laura said, that money though, that.
Send us your house. It sounds like too. Like
I was just gonna say, yeah, sell your house to Randall for what's left on the mortgage.
Hey, yeah, we need temporary housing too. That's a big issue we've come across, is finding temporary housing for people that are in very dire situations.
Yeah, the lack of emergency housing, transitional housing, the lack of public housing in general, and the lack of housing resources that the city has to provide its most needy residents is deplorable and is absolutely, shameful. We need to reprioritize public housing as much as we do food stamps and public health right now. We have a great Oregon Medicaid system from the ACA where we are enrolling everybody. We have great food stamp program. I was a recipient of food stamps when I was in graduate school because I was so hungry and poor. And, it's awesome that those resources are there when we need them. But if I'd ended up on the street because I couldn't pay my rent, I'd have nowhere to go. And Portland, just in general, the city needs to step up and do that. So I don't know, get elected and make those changes. Like that's what we need.
Let's go big. Jackie, Raven?
You want me to go first, Raven? For me, is hire folks like Raven. Have higher paid internships for high school students and above in our industry, and have them lead projects.
I can just say to that with hiring us, because please do, hire me. I would love, please do. Here we go, let me center myself. Reaching out to high schools, reaching out to my high school, Jefferson. If you're looking to target BIPOC communities, look for your Reynolds, look for your Gresham schools where now many Black people are being just pushed out to. Look for those areas because, like I said again, if you're looking to do this work, the resources, the schools, they're right there. And so, yeah,
get rid of unpaid internships altogether because those prioritize white rich people. Get rid of unpaid internships. If someone is doing work, unless they're a volunteer, they need to get paid for it, period.
Yeah. Any questions? If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Kate is so excited to read them out loud. But yeah, I would sort of echo that. Hire folks, pay them what they're worth, do your research. I hear a lot from designers that they say this work is too hard, and I say, no, it's not. That is not an excuse. It is really not. We have the power to change this industry. We just have to put the work in, and it's so rewarding when we do for our community and for this industry that it's, to me, that's really important, especially as as interior designers. We struggle with being taken seriously as a profession in general. So this is a struggle that is not new to us. And so as Michelle Obama says, when you go through a door, you don't close it behind you, you reach behind you and you pull people through. And so that is something that I really yell about a lot to our industry, that we need to start pulling people through. So I don't see any questions in the chat, which is too bad. I thought this was amazing to talk to you all. And Raven, there were a bunch of attendees, and I'm sure they'll be emailing you for wanting to know what your availability is.
Yes, I will be I'm going to put my email down there in the chat. So please do. Yes.
And if designers want to work with your street, your voice, or taking ownership, that's something they can reach out to you both about and start to become mentors and teachers and donating money and donating materials.
Definitely.
Or renovate too.
And renovate. Awesome. The more the merrier, right? Okay. Well, great. This was amazing. You all are doing amazing work. I'm so excited to talk with you about how we can make our community better, because it's something we need to do. So with that, I think I will say thank you so much to our panelists. It was great having you, and I hope your mentions blow up. Is that a thing that kids say? I don't know. I don't. Sorry.
Thank
Go
you
like my
so
Facebook
much.
page.
Thank you. Thank you.
Been so inspiring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great conversation.
Perfect. All right. Well, if there's no
Thanks
more
for having
questions.
us.
Oh, you got your, and Randall put in his email, so that's awesome. Yes, please reach out. That's how I got a hold of Randall. I just emailed and was like, hey, friend. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, I will be hopefully seeing you all in person soon or someday. And
Yes.
I can't wait to see you all. Thank you so much.